Taylorisms, as they became known, were very pejorative towards the worker. They were really slanderous towards the worker. And Taylor really, really felt this way. He didn't even hold it back. When he was making his testimony to Congress in 1911, based on his principles of scientific management, he didn't even hold back then. He didn't color or cover over his true thinking about the American worker who was working in the industrial complex at the time. He thought that the worker was stupid. At one point, he said that he was as stupid, literally used the word stupid, stupid as an ox, that it would be easier for managers to train a gorilla than it would be to train the American worker. And that they were not able to understand. They couldn't understand simple things like the idea of percentages. He didn't mean that they couldn't through training understand them, but they weren't trainable. It was impossible for them to be trained to understand higher order management thinking, something as simple as the idea of percentages. Taylor considered workers to be consummately lazy. In fact, he came up with a term called soldiering that implied that this would be when a worker would work to less than his capacity so that he would not get undue disrespect or undue pressure from the other workers that were working around him. In other words, you don't want to be the worker that had the highest output because you were making the other workers look bad. So you would kind of scale back your output, and that was what Taylor called soldiering. Again, another punitive term or a pejorative term towards even the military, where you just don't do what you possibly could do. And he also thought that they were so lazy, so inherently lazy, that you just couldn't trust the American worker. These were the human dimensions, the human cultural dimensions that were prescribed by Frederick Taylor in the Principles of Scientific Management. Now, Taylor was not the only person that's associated with this management movement. He was the father of this management movement, the scientific management movement. So we're going to take a look in the next segment at some other people who added to Taylor's work in a good way based on what was happening around that turn of the century there in the early 1900s, where the advent of the automobile appeared on the scene, and more people were desirous of having an automobile. So we'll take a look at that in the next segment.